Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm your host, Dr. Haider Shah, and on behalf of us, I would like to welcome all of you to this webinar. Thank you very much for joining us. Today we have very interesting topic, and I'm really honored to welcome and introduce our distinguished guest speaker, who is going to talk about the essentials to develop the research proposal. What are the misconceptions regarding the research proposal and how to prepare for it? Really very interesting topic, and I'm sure you will learn a lot from this session. So you will get the best insight, right guidance, and suggestions about all these things as we have an expert with us in today's this session. So stay tuned because an amazing stuff are coming ahead in this session. So before we start, I would like to thank Kalwat for arranging such enlightenment sessions, their support, and providing such a wonderful platform. The aim of the Karwas is to give you the opportunity to connect and interact with world renowned speakers, academic leaders, teachers, authors, researchers, experts, professionals, and businessmen to learn from their experiences, recommendations, suggestions, and tips, which will create an impact and will enable you to learn and develop yourself in order to grow and transform individually, as well as to contribute to the world in a positive way, as our slogan is come, learn, and share knowledge. So today we have an amazing person as a guest who has a vast and wonderful experience. He is an internationally known and recognized personality. He is a great human being. I always learn something new from him, who is contributing on various platforms and always ready to support and share his knowledge. Let me tell you one thing more that we have invited him multiple times, and he is one of the favorite speakers on Kalwas. And each time we get the requests that please invite him again so that we can learn a lot from him. So let me introduce him formally. He's an assistant professor at Bahria Business School, Bahria University, Islamabad. He has obtained his PhD from University Technology, Malaysia. He has over than 11 years in academia and industry experience. He has published several research articles in Impact Factor, ISI, and Scopus Index journals, along with the Higher Education Commission Pakistan recognized journals. In addition to this, he is well equipped with both qualitative and quantitative research methods and data analysis techniques using Smart PLS. He's also a trainer of Smart PLS. He has also participated at several international conferences as a session chair. His research interests are in the Islamic banking and finance. Last but not the least, he is a wonderful speaker, author, teacher, researcher, professional, my big friend, and a mentor, and above everything, a great human being. So, welcome back to the Kalwas platform, and thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Shahab Aziz.
Thank you very much for having me again. I think it's been a few months since we conducted the last session, so
Yes.
it was quick.
And that, yes,
It,
and
it
that's
was
why
just
we got a lot
yesterday.
of requests to arrange another session with you because it's been a gap of few months. But again, I would say it is always pleasure and lovely to have you because the way you share your knowledge and your experience and exposure, that is so helpful for the our audience. They always learn something new. And thank you very much for your generosity that you are always so kind, so nice that you give your time and you give this contribution to the world. Let me tell the audience about the format of today's session. Dr. Shahab Aziz will be discussing in this session because this session is more kind of a interactive session. Whatever the questions you have emailed us, we will be discussing that thing. Along with that, if you have any question, you can write in comment section, and we will be asking the Dr. Shahab Aziz regarding the questions about the research proposal development. So thank you very much, Dr. Shahab Aziz. Yes, over to you, please.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me again. So, inshallah, today's session will be interesting and we'll be expecting a lot of questions from the audience. And so, we'll be starting with the questions, or should I, give a brief about
Yes, Dr.
research?
Shahab, I would like you to please give overview about the research proposal because there are certain misconceptions regarding the research proposal. what are the essentials which should be included in research proposal. And by the way, please give your expert opinion as an examiner, since you are expert and you are the examiner at different universities. What are the different things you look as an examiner in research proposal, and what are the things which could be added later on? So please give the overview regarding the research proposal to our audience. Thank you.
All right. So we'll be starting with the research proposal. Basically, the first question is why you are, sort of preparing for a research proposal. It might be for your PhD admission or scholarship. So the first thing you need to see, uh, where you're applying for, like if you're applying for any university for scholarship for admission. Now different universities have different criteria for research proposal. Mean to say, in terms of length, maybe different university, some of the universities might accept a 10-page proposal, some of the university might ask you a bit lengthy proposal. So firstly you should know, wherever you're applying, what is the criteria of accepting the proposal to that particular university. So because you have to fulfill that criteria. In terms of component, the component are generic and same. uh, Maybe there's issue of length, so you need to consider that in, but the components will remain the same, right? So a proposal should be convincing, right? I mean, because you are trying to get a scholarship or you're trying to get the admission in PhD. Now whatever the work you are proposing, it should convince the reader, right? Maybe it's if you're presenting in a PhD sort of thing, then you have to defend the proposal. If it's for the admission, then there will be admission committee which will be looking into your proposal. So it should convince the reader, right? So there are few points that I would like to highlight, which are required to convince the examiner or whoever is reading your proposal. The first thing is your research should be, crystal clear, right? As a reader, whoever is reading your proposal should get a clear idea what exactly you want to do, right? The second thing is it should be well justified, and if it's a PhD, then there must be a theoretical contribution. There must be a gap in literature that you're going to address. And one more thing is it should be worthwhile. So um, if you are highlighting any gap, or um, you're trying to address a problem, then you need to highlight why this problem is important, why you want to solve this problem, right? Is it worthwhile to do study on this gap, or whatever you are, whatever your objective is, right? And the third thing is it has to be realistic and achievable, doable. So a good idea might be rejected because it's not doable. So in order to convince the reader, these are the basic things that every individual should keep in mind. Uh, Now I'll highlight few of the essentials. The first thing is your working title or your proposed title. Um, this title might not be the final one, because as you will go through during the research, your title might be altered somehow, because um, proposal is just a proposal. It's not a full length study. So to start with, you need to have a working or provisional title. Make sure the title should be concise enough, specific enough. And some of the universities have different rules for the title as well, like the length of the title, the number of words that the title should have. So you need to keep that aspect in view as well. The second part is the introduction. Um introduction and research problem. So in introduction, we generally start with a broader overview of the area in which you're working, and then you have to narrow it down to what exactly the focus of your research proposal is, right? And the main important thing is you have to justify whatever the work you are going to do, how this work will be contributing to the new knowledge, uh, how this work can enhance the understanding that we currently have regarding that issue. So these are the important aspects that you need to address in introduction and research problem. Uh, the problem, little bit to talk about problem statement as well. Every research, the objective of every research to solve an issue or a problem. If there's no problem, there's no need to do any research. So as a researcher, we should look for the areas or problem that for example, if there is a huge turnover of employee in a specific industry. For example, if it's banking, there are a lot of people, leave that job. So that's the problem. Then we can look into that problem. Why uh, people are uh, why there's huge turnover in this specific industry. So that's a problem. Similarly, if the consumer are switching from one, uh, for example, in technology, if the consumer are switching from going for shopping to the store rather than they are switching to the online shopping. So again, we can look into why people are switching to the online, or why consumer are stopping the consumption of something, and why they are going for the other products. So switching can be looked into. Or similarly in finance, we can look into different investment patterns. For example, if the people are going for Islamic finance or Islamic financial products, now what are the reasons? Is it on the basis of religion, or there are some other advantages as well that the people are switching from convention to Islamic? So if we look around, there are a lot of problems around us. So every problem needs a solution. In other words, I mean, every problem needs a research to be solved, right? So these problems are the opportunities for a researcher to look into, to give the solution to these problems. So a good observer can be a good researcher as well. So we as a researcher, are looking into different things. For example, yesterday, one of my colleague came with an idea that there is a quality standard, ISO 5001, right? So now we are going to look into why companies go for these, or in which countries more companies are going towards these quality standards. So what are the economic factors that are forcing? Is it because of regulation? Is it because of profitability? What are the reason why a lot of companies are switching towards these standards? So this was the idea that we were discussing to look into. So we need a problem to start with, to provide a solution to that problem. So that's very important. If there's no problem, there's no need to carry out research. So we have to be very clear what is the issue and how we are going to solve it. The third thing is literature review. uh, we as a researcher, you need to give an idea, give the audience the understanding that I, as a researcher, do understand the literature. Where does the literature stands currently, and in that specific area, we need to give credit to those who has already contributed in that area, right? So the state of existing literature is very important, and we have to give all these things in literature review, just to make an understanding to the reader that we understand research, we have gone through the available literature, and this literature will review will help you in two ways. Firstly, it will help you to identify a gap in existing literature. So unless you do a very good literature review, it is very difficult, or if I say it's impossible, to come up with a research gap. Most of the time the students, um, they don't do a proper literature review. That's why they are struggling till the end of the thesis, right? Even they reach at the final stage of their thesis, but still, they are not that confident. So literature review will give you huge confidence. You will be confident that you have gone through the existing literature, so you know where the literature stands, so you know the gaps in the literature. You will be very confident to defend as well. And thirdly, you will get the idea regarding methodology as well. When you will go through the existing literature, you'll come to know that how the previous researcher have solved these sort of problem, and which methodology they have adopted. So a good literature review is must for a good proposal, right? And the process of research also starts from the literature review. Even though this is the middle part of your thesis or proposal after the introduction, before methodology, but the process of research starts from literature review. And there are different ways to do the literature review. um, we can have a session on this as well, that how we search the different databases. Make sure you need to have access to Emerald, Science Direct, Web of Science, these sort of databases, so you can have a thorough literature. Then you can use different keywords to search. So literature review is the process that you need to first understand that process, and then you can uh, carry on this literature. It will help you to enhance your confidence, and you will be able to grasp the existing literature. You'll able to find the gap in existing literature, and you'll also know the methodology, the right methodology that you need to adopt for your research. One thing that we need to be very clear: literature review is not just a description of the facts. Most of the theses or proposal that we see in literature review, there's no synthesis of literature. It's just a reflection or presentation of different previous studies. So I think this is not recommended, or this is not acceptable, I would say. Uh, Literature review is not a history lesson. So you have to synthesize your literature. You have to present the literature in a way that you have to defend your work as well. So just presentation of existing literature is not a literature review. But most of the theses we see these sort of descriptive nature of literature review, but there should be a voice of the writer as well. That uh, how do you see the literature? Where are the issues? You can criticize the existing literature. You can defend your own ideas as well in between. So as the examiner, we want to see the voice of the um, whoever is doing the research, right? So when doing a literature review, make sure that you come up with your own ideas as well. So don't just present the previous literature as it is. The author A said these words. Author B has come up with this study. Author C has studied. No, this is not the way of writing literature. So maybe if in future we have a detailed session of how to do literature review, um, and how to synthesize uh, the existing literature and justify your own study along the way. So maybe in future we do a session on literature review, but the main thing is it should not be just a descriptive nature, right? uh, One thing is the research design. um, Whatever you're going to do or whatever the problem you have in your hand, which you have mentioned in your first part, introduction and problem. So you need to a very good research design and methodology to solve that problem. The literature we will review will give you an idea what sort of methodology you're gonna adopt. But when you're doing in your research proposal stage, maybe your methodology is not as final or not as firm, because going forward maybe there will be alteration in your methodology as well. But up till this point you should be very clear on the basis of your literature review that how previous researchers have solved these sort of problem, which method they have adopted, whether they have gone for qualitative, quantitative, or which research philosophy they have adopted, what was the sampling technique, unit of analysis, and stuff like that. So we should be very clear about these things as well in your research proposal, because this will help you to present that as a researcher you not only um, showing that there is a problem that need to be solved, then how this problem will be solved. So you are very clear about the whole process. You're very clear about the literature, where does the literature stand. You're very clear about your contribution that you're going to make, how your research will help in enhancing the understanding regarding the uh, different issues, and how you will be going to solve this problem. So I think these are the 4 or 5 main points that when you're developing a research proposal you need to keep in mind. um, I think if you do like this way, or these are the steps, if you follow, I think you will be able to produce a good proposal or decent proposal. But there are always, proposal is just the first stage, right? It's not the end of your study. But make sure you do a very good literature review, so that at least it's initial stage, but still you should spend enough time. I mean, you should not rush into just making a proposal and submitting, because once it is rejected then you have to start from the scratch. So make sure you have enough time, you have done enough literature review. You should be then more confident to present your proposal. So these are the few tips. Maybe in future we do some detailed sessions regarding literature review, that how we should do literature review, or different other tips. But for now I think these are the few steps that if you adopt, it will be good for your research.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shah. What start you have given. It was really wonderful to see that you have mentioned that the title from where we start the thesis. You have mentioned it very nicely that you have to look at it and you have to follow the university template for that purpose. Sometimes they limit by the words, that that much words should be contained in your title. And I love your phrase while discussing the literature review, that if you are a good observer, then you will become a good researcher. Really, the more you observe the minute details, the minute discussions and explanation, the more you come to know what is happening in the field, and what has happened, and how different people have investigated the same issue. And the third chapter, again, I loved your another way, that do spend more time on your proposal. And this is what I usually recommend to my students, that please, to particular my PhD student, that please develop the research proposal in proper way, because once you develop it properly, you have a proper research problem statement, the research gap and contribution, then it is going to be very easy for you to defend at every level of the defenses and seminars, etc. So, of course, one should give a well thought to the research proposal, because this is what you are going to propose. And very nicely you mentioned that if there is no problem, then there is no need of the research. So whatever the problem you are going to select, be sure that it is genuine problem and you are going to solve for it. So I would like to start with the first question, which is also related to the problem statement. Dr. Shahab, should we start with the first question?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So the first question is, sir, please guide us, that most of the time we are mainly asked about problem statement. Please guide how to write problem statement more effectively, so that examiner could say that yes, it's a concrete problem statement. What should be the crux that should be included in problem statement? Yes, please.
Yeah, because I think this is the question that, as a researcher, for example, if you're doing a PhD, and definitely the examiner will be looking into your first chapter. The first chapter is very important, and after background, you will be having your research problem. As I mentioned earlier, if there's no problem, there's no need of research. So, as an examiner, we are really looking into because in PhD you're spending your 3 or 4 years, right? So I mean, there should be some contribution. If you're spending 3 or 4 years uh, on some work, then there must be some contribution to the knowledge as well. So that's why, as an examiner, we're very conscious about your this area problem statement. Now it is very difficult to write a very good problem statement. So firstly, I think you need to have a very good literature review, because problem statement is not just a description of a problem. You first need to defend it through literature as well, right? Uh, so you should clearly state the existing state of the literature. Uh, what is the work that has been done so far, and what is the work that is still missing. So in some theses, we see that problem statement and gap are together, right? But in some thesis we see the problem statement is separate and the gap is separate. For example, in Malaysia, I've seen theses where we had problem statement and gap are together. So uh, you need to have a very good literature review if you want to have a good problem statement. Uh, you cannot write a good problem statement without a thorough literature review, right? Uh, Now, the problem can be of different types. For example, you have a problem of opportunity seeking or problem solving. So, opportunity in a sense that if there, I mean, uh, oppo- if there, for example, if an industry uh, the sales are growing, but they are not growing as it was expected. Now there is a problem. Uh, as a researcher, you can look into this, that why the sales of a specific product are not increasing, what were the issues. So you can look into these sort of problems as well, and then you can see where does the literature stands on those issues. um, what were the previous method that the people has adopted to in order to address those issues. So a good problem statement can only be uh, written after a very good literature review, which normally people spend less of time on this literature review. That's why they don't come up with a very good uh, literature review problem statement. And these are the few things I think, if as a student you will you'll be able to write a good problem statement.
Thank you very much for such a elaborative answer. It was lovely to be listening these words, because I can imagine as a student how powerful these statements are and how beautiful in terms of guidance. It is very nice to see it. Thank you very much. Another question, Dr. Shahab Aziz, we have is the most of the time people they get confused regarding the theories and the role of the theory, and sometimes they ask me that Dr. Shah, can we have two theories or three theories, or please guide us how many theories are required for our research. So the question is, please guide the audience regarding what is theory, and please elaborate. Should they have one theory, two theories, or multiple theories, or what is the phenomena to select the theories for their theoretical framework? Yes, please.
Theories generally tell us that how different variables are positioned, right? For example, if phenomena is an antecedent, or it's an outcome, or where we need to place a variable. So it's not our own choice that we can place a variable anywhere in the model, right? So we need the underpinning theories to support our research framework or the research model. In every research, especially in research proposal or thesis, you'll find a research model. Uh, Now, often students face these questions as well, that how your framework is backed by one theory or different theories. Um, I think even the multiple theories can be used to support your model, but as long as it is justified. Well, I have seen PhD theses where more than one theories have been used to support your framework. So you just have to justify it, either it's a one theory or more than one. So that's acceptable as long as it is justified. So any framework which is not backed by a theory is not acceptable. So as a researcher, when you're doing a literature review of specific area or domain, you should know the theories of your area as well, because the theories will guide you where you will place your variables, right? So the positioning of variable is not our own choice. The theories are helpful in placing the variable, that where these variables should be placed, how these variables are linked with each other. Again, this is not the discretion of researcher that uh, we link these variables the way we want. No, we that's why we need theories to substantiate or support our argument, or to support whatever the framework that we are coming up with our for our thesis or proposal. So without theory, the model or framework is not acceptable. So as a researcher, you should be very careful. Whatever the framework you are developing, there should be a strong theoretical linkages underneath that model. Some of the students just mention the theories, that they mention in proposal or in thesis, they have mentioned few theories. No, there's no link between their theory and the framework they have come up with. So make sure theories are not just to mention in proposal or thesis. You need to establish a link of those theories with your research framework. Just mentioning the theories is not enough. You need to have a separate section as well where you can elaborate why these theories have been selected. The theory can there can be one theory. Some people say that the framework should only be backed by one theory, but I have seen PhD theses where more than one theories have also been used by the scholars to justify their framework. So it's not a question of having one or two. The question is how you justify the addition of adding one theory or two theories. As long as your inclusion of more than one theory is justified, I don't think there is any issue. So your framework should be backed by a theory, and you have to justify it in your write up. And if you come up if you are asked in defending their proposal, again you have to justify during that defense or viva as well, that how the theory is linking with your how your framework is backed by a certain underpinning theories.
Superb answer, very nicely said. And again, this is what you referred at the beginning of the session, that it is more inclined towards having a better literature review. If you have done a literature review thoroughly and extensively, you would know that which theory is actually supporting which variables. And you have very rightly mentioned that there should be link between the variable. It is not just mentioned in the proposal that you have written the theory, but it should be linked with the different variables, which could show the actual relationship between the variable. And of course, theory should be there to support your overall model. Dr. Shahab, we have another question live. That person wants to ask that what is the best title for our proposal? It shall always be dependent variable and independent variable in the title, or I think this gentleman wants to ask the same thing, that whether the moderating and mediating variables should be included with the industry and the country as well. Please, your thoughts on that.
Yes, we have seen the title with mentioning the mediator and moderator as well. But I think your DV is your main phenomena of interest that you're going to study. So uh, there should be something about your DV. And if mediator, moderator are also your focus variables, then they can also be added. But I think again there are some rules on including mediator, moderator as well. Like for example, I was in Malaysia, and I think one of the university, uh, they said that you should not include mediator, moderator within your title, right? So make sure when you are in sorting out your title, maybe the specific university have certain rules as well. But if they are included, we see that a lot of people do include these mediating role or moderating role, uh, so they can be included. I don't think there's any issue in that, as long as the university doesn't have any specific limitations on adding these things, but these variables can be added in title.
Yeah, very nicely said once again. Thank you. And we have another live question, and they want to ask that, sir, please guide how to write background of the study in research proposal. What should be included in background of the study? Yes, please.
The background is just a broader overview of your research. So again, your back for your good background, you need a good literature review, because the background is just a broader overview then you have to narrow it down to your own problem. There's something called funnel approach. If you see the funnel, the picture of funnel, it's broader from the top and then is narrowed down on the downside, right? So some people say that it's right now background is a funnel approach, that you have to start from the broader area so that the reader can give a clear picture of the domain of your area, and then you narrow it down to your own specific issue or the specific problem that you are going to address, because that has to be a, a very specific thing that you need to that you are going to address. But the background should be more of a give a broader picture of the domain or the area of study that you are going to touch upon. Maybe in future, if we conduct any specific session, then I might be able to share, some material as well, where we can exactly show that this was the topic, and how the background has been written, how it has been narrowed down. But for today's session, I don't have anything to show exactly, but just to give an idea, it's a broader overview of your research area, which has to be narrowed down at the end toward your specific issue or the problem that you're going to address.
Yes, very nicely said once again, Dr. Shahab. And yes, of course, a great idea. Yeah, we will conduct another session which would be extensive in terms of that. Dr. Shahab will be presenting the different slides and particularly the examples, how to write the background of the study or the problem statement, how to write it more effectively, and what could be the best examples for that. So stay tuned because we will be having that session soon with the Dr. Shahab. Okay, Dr. Shahab, thank you for elaborative answer. We have another question, that how do we know that our literature review is enough for our research proposal stage? Yes, please.
The first thing is, as a researcher, you need to have an understanding of literature review. The technical aspect of the literature review you should know first, and then you should uh, jump into doing it and writing it. There are two things, right? The first thing is reviewing the literature, and the second part is writing the literature review. Now these two things are very different. The first thing that is related to reviewing the literature. Now, for literature uh, review, firstly, you should know the relevant journal, you should know the databases, right? You should have access of those databases. Then you should also learn how to use different keywords to search the literature review. Now, these are the technical aspects of doing literature review. So, first, you need to learn these aspects, and then you should start actually looking into literature. Um, if you have access to that databases and you know how to search, how to use keywords in those databases, then very quickly you can grasp, um, or you can see, uh, related to your domain, what is the literature available. So I think if you do literature review randomly, or without use of these databases, then I don't think you'll be very confident in your literature review. So once you have gone through all the databases, then I think you'll be very confident about your literature review. Now, in terms of number, we cannot propose any number that this much articles are good enough for good literature review. Again, it's subjective and depends upon your domain of the study or the research area or the problem that you're going to uh, address. But I think if you go through these the main databases like Emerald, Web of Science, Science Direct, Scopus, and maybe few other databases. These are the very good databases. So if you have gone through these databases, I think your literature review will be good enough, and you will be confident to defend your proposal as well. So first, learn the technical aspect, get the access of different databases, learn how you use different keywords to search the articles, and then the second aspect is writing the literature review. Reviewing the literature is first pass, and writing the literature review the second part. And the second part I already mentioned that it should not be just description of the existing literature. This is not a literature review. It should be a written in a synthesized way where reader's voice should be seen as well. That you're not just reporting the facts. You're reporting the existing fact to come up with the gap, to have a criticism on the existing literature, to criticism on the limitation of the existing literature. So literature review should be like that. So if you done these both parts, I think it'll be good enough for proposal at least. And later on you can update your literature, because nowadays um, we see a lot of literature coming out in these databases every year. Thousand and thousand of new papers are coming, so you have to continuously update your literature review as well, going forward.
Very nicely said once again, Dr. Shahab. And there is one very common question which all the students all the time ask, that please elaborate the concept of research contribution. What is research contribution, theoretical contribution, practical contribution? Yes, please.
I think again this is a very important aspect of first understanding what is theoretical contribution. uh, a con- Doing your same research in a new context is not a theoretical contribution. A lot of student in MS and different level, they say this study has been carried out in um, develop, any developed country. We are replicating that in in our context. This study has not been done. So this is not a theoretical contribution. This is just a replication of the existing study. So theoretical contribution can be, for example, uh, a new link that you have created of different variable which has not been studied before. It can be a new mediator, it can be a moderator, it can be a new antecedent of any variable, it can be a new outcome variable as well. Or if we talk about HR marketing, maybe a phenomena previously was measured as unidimensional, and you as a researcher are proposing that this has to be a multidimensional, and you come up with a multidimensional scale. You develop a new scale. That's a theoretical contribution. um, so this is how you can come up with any contribution. The second aspect is question of why and how. uh, because just adding a new variable or just extending a existing theory with addition of new linkage, addition of new moderator, mediator, this won't be a theoretical contribution, right? You need to answer two questions. No, why it is important to study this link. Just putting a new variable in a framework won't be acceptable unless you answer a question of why it is important, why you want to study this link, how this. Now the another question is how this will increase the our understanding of the phenomena, right? The understanding which was lacking currently, and with the establishing a new link or new variable or the addition of new variable, how our understanding toward the phenomena will be enhanced or improved, right? So, just extending a theory, adding a variable is not a contribution. You need to answer why and how, right? So when you are writing your theoretical contribution, so make sure you answer these two questions as well. Uh, Only then this will be acceptable, right? So just adding a new link and adding a new variable, right, won't be enough. These two questions needs to be answered in order to justify your theoretical contribution. And for PhD study, or if you're writing any proposal, if you're writing any research paper for a good journal, theoretical contribution is must. Otherwise, um, your paper, if it's a paper will be rejected. If it's a thesis, I mean, again, you'll be in trouble if there's no theoretical contribution, or you were unable to justify whatever the work you are doing. So these are the aspects you need to look into when you say that you're making any theoretical contribution. The question of why and how are very important to address and to incorporate in order to justify your contribution.
Yes. Superb answer for that. Very nicely, you have concluded that how can you write the contribution in a very well manner. Okay, we have another very interesting question online. Mr. Zishan wants to ask that, sir, please guide how much should be the problem statement in context of material. One or two para is enough, or pages as standard. So they want to know the standard of the problem statement for their research proposal. Yes, please.
I think a page and a half or three paragraphs are good enough. It has to be very crisp, right? And has to be very specific, because writing a good problem statement is not easy. But in terms of length, yeah, that's pretty much okay, as long as you have uh, written it very nicely. Otherwise, if you have written even few pages, but if it doesn't make sense, so it won't be acceptable. So lengthwise, yes, it can be few paragraphs, but as long as it's written the way it should be written, so I think that's acceptable. We see in thesis length of 2 3 paragraphs, so I think that's pretty okay, but it has to be
Yes.
written nicely.
Yes, very nicely said once again. And if I can conclude what you have said, it that it should be the quality, not quantity. Whatever you have written, that should make sense, and it should be backed by the references, and particularly the latest references, in order to justify your problem statement. Very nicely said once again. Dr. Shah, we have another very interesting question, and we have received a lot of emails regarding this question. Please elaborate for our audience that, please explain the relationship of research methodology chapter with the chapter one, particularly the problem statement, research questions, and research objectives. Most of the time, the examiners, they ask the question that your research methodology is not aligned with your research question and objectives, particularly the research problem. Yes, please, your thoughts on that.
Yes, the research methodology depends upon what sort of research question you are posing. For example, if your research question is you're going to explore something, even the wording is very important in research question. So if the wording of research question is you're going to explore something, and in methodology, if you say that I'll be using quantitative methodology, then it won't make sense, because when we say we are going to explore something, we as a examiner, we now assume, or we assess, or we conclude that the methodology will be qualitative because the phenomena is not established as yet. So you don't know much about the POI and the variables. So there won't be variables, there won't be any framework. So you're going for a qualitative study. And if a research question is you're going to explain something, uh, then we can assume or we can assess that your methodology will be quantitative. So that's how your research questions are related with your um, methodology. Secondly, the right method is very important to address certain problems. And during literature review, you will get some idea as well that what sort of methodology is suitable for whatever the POI or phenomena you are going to study. So, literature review will help you out in that. But the linkage between research question objective and methodology is very vital, and even the wording of the research question give us an idea what sort of methodology you will be adopting. So the wording of research question is very important as well. We see a lot of students do mistakes. They say we are exploring something, and if we see the methodology is quantitative. Again, this is not aligned properly. So that's how the RQ and ROS are linked with your methodology. There's a direct relationship between both. That's why examiner do see the linkage or alignment of methodology to what you are going to explore. That's how they are linked as well. That's why examiner do ask these questions, why there is no alignment or linkage between the two, because they should be linked with each other.
Superb answer once again, Dr. Shahab. I am really enjoying the way you are answering it because these are the real practical problems people face, particularly the students, because they don't understand at the early stage of their research proposal that how they are linked and how they can answer the question. So, very nicely said. Okay, we have another very interesting question. They want to ask that, Doctor, please guide us. What is the best explanation for systematic literature review? Any different with the literature review, sir? Or both is the same? I think this gentleman wants to ask the question that what is the difference between systematic literature review and literature review? Yes, please.
Yes, SLR is totally a different way of reviewing the literature. For SLR, you need to have inclusion and exclusion criteria as well. There's a prism methodology. If I'm not sure, there's a prism framework is available as well. If you Google it, you will find a prism framework which is used for SLR, systematic literature review. Systematic means that you are doing a literature review with a certain objectives, and then you have to report uh, the whole process of your literature review, that what were the databases that you have accessed, what were the keywords that you have used, how many articles did you find in each database, and then what was the filtering process, what was the inclusion and exclusion criteria. So systematic literature is doing literature review in a systematic way. Then you have to report all these things, uh, and this literature review is I think there's less bias if you do it systematically, because once a literature review has been done systematically, that means whoever will do this literature review will come up with the same sort of finding. So systematic literature is different from the traditional literature review, uh, but for that you need to have access of different databases, and you need to understand how we actually do it, what is the filtering criteria, what is the inclusion and exclusion criteria. So this is a totally different way of doing literature review. So nowadays a lot of people do this SLR as well, and it seems to be, apparently it is seems to be less biased, because it's not on your own choice that what you are including or excluding, because you have to report everything that you comes up with, and why you have excluded articles, what why these articles were kept and why other were not kept. You have to report all this. And this way of doing literature review seems to be less biased, and it is totally different from the traditional literature review.
Very nicely said once again, Dr. Shahab Aziz. The way you are explaining the things are so nice, so wonderful, but we have the time limitations. One last question, which is, of course, very important for the researchers, particularly the young researchers. What advice you would give to the beginners of the research proposal? Yes, please.
The advice is that if you want to come into research or do research, first of all, you should be, enthusiastic enough and energetic enough that you're going to. I mean, because doing research is not an easy work, so you have to be mentally prepared for that. Secondly, you need to have a very good habit of reading. If you're not a good reader, then you cannot be a good researcher, because you going forward you have to read a lot of stuff. So you need to have a very good habit of reading. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for you to do research. Thirdly, the technical aspect of research is very important. I think before we should start doing research, we need to understand it first. How we should do research, what are the steps, what are the process of doing it. I think that that's very important, because people just start doing it without knowing how and what is the process that we need to adopt. For example, even if it's a literature review, no, we need to understand first this technical aspect. Or suppose writing an abstract. Now, as abstract seems a, just one paragraph or 15 or 20 lines, but if you break it down, there are five components of abstract. So if as a researcher you understand these aspects, like how to write abstract, what is background, what should be included in the background, what is the research question, what are the wording that we should use for the research question, right? What is the scope of the study, what should be included in scope of the study, what is literature review, what is the synthesis of the literature review, what is the uh, descriptive literature review, what are the keywords, what are the databases. Methodology, we have many options. So I think you need to um, first understand the technical aspect of the research, right? And once you understand those, then you should start jump into actually doing it. These are the few things I think, if you will look into, I think these things will help you in doing the research.
Yes, very nicely given you wonderful suggestions to the young researcher, particularly because they need a guidance a lot at this stage, because everything is very much new for them and they try to learn everything. And I loved your sentence that they must have a good reading habit, because what we refer is the literature review. If you do the literature review thoroughly and extensively, of course, you are going to dig the good research material. But of course, what you have mentioned in your talk, that yes, you must have access to the proper databases, which is very much important, because if you have access to the good research databases, only then you will have the access to the quality work, and then you will come to know the better understanding of what is happening in the field. So, what is your message to the world as a teacher, researcher, trainer, learner, professional, and educator? Yes, Dr. Shah, please.
Like always, I say, I mean, in life you should have certain goals and objectives to achieve firstly, and you should go after your passion. See your strength, your weaknesses, what you're good at, right? Don't do something because others are doing, right? Look into yourself, don't look outside, right? Look into yourself, see what's your strength are, what your weaknesses are, what what are your ambitions, what is your passion. So always go after your passions, right? Don't follow others, don't do something because others are doing, and see your strength and weaknesses, and set your goals and targets, and work hard for your goals. And we as a Muslim do believe that mm, man can have nothing but for what he or she strives for. So if you'll do hard work, I think there's no way that you won't be successful. So these are the few things that I think uh,
Yes, very,
in
very nice
journey
message
look
to the
into.
world. Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Shahab. Once again, it was a lovely session with you, and it's always pleasure to have you. That's what in the beginning I said that yes, we always learn something new from you because you are a so knowledgeable person, and I know how much hard work you do in order to be updated regarding the softwares, regarding the different things. That's why you are so special and so talented. Thank you very much. At the end, I would say that indeed developing a research proposal is very much crucial and important stage, and you have to give a due importance to it, and you need to see the process because the process will make you properly. You have to do the literature review extensively and thoroughly so that you can dig out the real research problem and you can work very well, and to understand the research methodology, that how it is linked with your chapter one, that is particularly research problem, research objectives, and research questions. So, do understand it. We will have another session with the Dr. Shahab Aziz in which he will be showing you the practical examples of how to write the background of the study, the problem statement, and the research question and objective, and how it is aligned with the research methodology. So, do follow the distinguished guest speaker, Dr. Shahab Aziz, his research work, and you can email him for future learning and guidance. He is very generous and always ready to help the young researcher and everyone. Moreover, wonderful explanation which he has already given to you. I hope that will help you to learn and develop your understanding regarding the research proposal development. Take advantage of all the information, the important tips and suggestions shared by the expert. So that is all we have time for today. Thank you once again, Dr. Shahab Aziz, and to the audience as well who joined us. If you have any additional question about the information shared today, please email to us, or you can connect with the speakers directly through his email or social media account. Thank you all for your support and liking our session. Stay tuned because many more sessions are on the way. Please do not miss any session, and take until next session. Take care of yourself. Bye bye.